Welcome to Resilience+RISE, the podcast where resilience is not just a concept, but a lived experience.
Mm.
I'm your host, Thomas Carrier, a resilience coach, an ultramarathoner, and a relentless believer in the human spirit's ability to rise.
Mm.
Today's guest, it's an honor to call back David Woods Bartley. He was when I started my podcast journey, he was one of my initial guests. And his message, his being created such a sense of powerfulness, not only to me, but the initial listeners. So I want to give that experience today as my listeners have grown to what it is. David is an international keynote speaker. He helps others to move from mental hellness to mental wellness. He's a three-time TEDx speaker. He has been a speaker of the year for 2025 for mental health. But why am I calling him? For some of you all who may not know, Suicide Prevention Month, that is September. Yes, he's a suicide attempt survivor and he's a strong advocate of suicide prevention. Having his life saved, David is committed to moving the conversation about suicide, trauma, and mental illness from the dark shadows where they live to the forefront of public concern.
Mm.
So, with this, David, welcome to Resilience Plus Rise, the podcast.
Brother, it is so one. I didn't realize you probably told me, and forgive me that I might have forgotten, that you had honored me with being one of your early guests, and then to be asked back. I've never been asked back on a podcast before, so I don't know what that says about me, but
But you know what? When there's a calling, irrespective of what the beliefs
yeah,
that you have, if you believe in your own self, I mean, being true to your own self, that's one of the biggest gifts that you can give to yourself. And if
absolutely.
and if there is a calling, and if you listen to it, and one of the thoughts that came to my mind when I was thinking about September, the Suicide Prevention Month, you came up in the forefront, and I said, I do not want even those few listeners to miss out on what they could see. Or it may not be them, but somebody they know.
Mm.
If they can just reach out through a podcast or reach out to you or reach out to me on however it is. And guys, I will be putting out David's connection on in our comments below. Have a look. Have a look. So, David, if you could just go through the story of what I don't know if I want to say it in a politically right way that what made you say that this is life. I've had enough. I
Yeah.
want to get over with it. What changed and what have you become in these last few years?
Absolutely, brother. So last Sunday was the 14th anniversary of the day I was going to kill myself, August 31st. So August 31st, 2011, I live about 30 minutes outside of Sacramento. And on that particular day, I made my way to what's known as the Forest Hill Bridge. Now, everybody, of course, knows its iconic cousin in San Francisco, the famous Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate, and the Golden Gate Bridge. But the Forest Hill Bridge, brother, it stands 730 feet above the North Fork of the American River. It's 500 feet further off the ground. And I made my way there, parked my vehicle, made my way to the midpoint, and was poised to not so much jump as it was to fall. And it was going to take me 7.5 seconds for my body to hit the river. Somebody saw me in that precarious position, called 911, and the sheriff's deputy approached me from the left-hand side. And what he didn't do was make any contact with me at all. What he did do is create connection. And connection creates hope, and hope saves lives. And I was taken
Wow.
off the bridge to an emergency room, then to a psychiatric ward where I'd spend 15 life-changing days and began this journey. In your words, you quote echoed, from mental illness to mental wellness. And when people, brother, found out where I was and why, and you probably remember this, they were shocked, because I was married at the time to an amazing woman who's still one of my closest friends. And we ran a nationally recognized, had just been in USA Today, end of life animal sanctuary. And there's probably no one likes animals, so they can't relate. But no, of course, everybody does. And we had as many as 100. We had 25 horses, 23 dogs, and 9 pot-bellied pigs. And we had 15 different species. We did no adoptions because we took the ones that nobody wanted. And they stayed until, as we like to say, they made their transition. And the genius, the brilliance, this amazing place was all because of my former bride's, what I call mama bear heart. Because she just was incredible. I was good at picking up manure. Like that was my contribution. And so people saw me as this running this sanctuary, and like, well, what in the world would have you want to kill yourself? And it was the monster of mental illness. And what I like to say is sometimes, and maybe now, brother, it's most of the time, what hurts the most can't be seen. And what got me to that point was the combination of 2 different things. One was genetics. So my beloved father suffered terribly from clinical depression. His father had killed himself when my father was 5. So there's that genetic tendency, but my 3 beloved brothers don't have any of this. So just because there is a genetic, a DNA influence doesn't mean you're going to suffer. But with this kind of genetics, when the match of trauma lights that dry tinder, it's almost a given. And mine was that I was brutally and sadistically sodomized and raped on repeat occasions when I was 12 years old by a Boy Scout leader in the early 70s. And every time this thing would violate me, when he was done, he would say, David, don't forget, these are initiations. And all the boys go through it, but we don't talk about it. And back in the 70s, as a child, if you were told by an adult you don't talk about it, then you didn't talk about it. And I didn't talk about it. And it became part of my being. And one of the things, Thomas, that I, and as I shared with you before we started, that my work has expanded, I hope in a positive way, is, people talk a lot about, when someone's suicidal or maybe even not to that extreme, maybe even in the great body of work that you do, that they want to give up, okay, you got to change your thinking, you got to change how you feel. And I'm like, well, yes, but that's superficial, because ultimately I wasn't going to kill myself because of what I was thinking or feeling. I was going to kill myself because of what I believe. And everything we do, what we eat, what we wear, this conversation here, everything can be traced back to a belief. And what's interesting about belief is, I think sometimes people automatically assume, well, belief and truth are the same thing. Well, no, they're not. They can be. I mean, how long did the world's population believe that the world was flat? They thought it was true. Well, no, that's, my gosh. So my belief set on August 31st, 2011, what I believed, even though I'm running, I'm taking care of other people's dying animals. I believed I was worthless, useless, stupid, pitiful, grotesque, ugly, and believed to be true that my family, my wife, everybody would be exponentially better off without me. And then you'd say, dude, that's not true. Correct, but that's what I believed. And I think it's essential that we get down to this as we're looking to fight this monster in a different way. And that's really what I'm all about of late, is to try a different approach. And over these last 14 years, it's been to look at myself, to first, like, okay, here is my belief set. Then how do I change that? And so it's been through therapy and group and other electroconvulsive therapy, which I had not done when I first saw you, which has been transformative, shock therapy, as they call it, medication, all different sorts of things, so that I can create a different belief set. Because I think there will be souls who listen to this podcast who have tracked the same thing. So trauma happens. Trauma initiates a belief. It initiates belief. Belief then creates thought. Thought then gives rise to emotion. Emotion gives rise to action. So everything traced back, we're acting, we're thinking, we're feeling, we're relating, we're seeing the world from what we believe. And that belief is influenced by this horrific thing that different things impact people differently. So
Even though I have heard segments of this, but there are moments wherein you just hold your breath when somebody's talking, and this is one of those moments, David. Sorry.
it's okay, brother.
So now that instance happened, you know where you stand. You know that you are, or we are capable of changing our beliefs,
Yes.
however true or however false.
It can be really hard. It can take time, but it is beliefs are malleable, beliefs are flexible, beliefs are changeable. They really are. And I think, once I stumbled upon this, and I share it now in all my talks, is to allow other people who, if they have a particular person in their life who either they sense or they know who is suffering, and they're looking at trying to influence that individual's thinking or feeling, what I say is, you got to go deeper, because this is, thoughts and feelings are going to change like the weather, but everything, brother. I mean, our next move in the next 30 minutes stems ultimately from something we believe, whatever that is. And I've not heard anybody talk about it this way, which doesn't mean I'm right, but I know for me, everything that I do now ultimately is to either continue to substantiate and reinforce a new belief set, or create a new belief set. Because we have all, I don't know how many beliefs that we have. We have quite a few. So, but it's like, wow. And the other thing that there's two other things. I'll just share one real quick. That, and I say this, I actually hate the term suicide prevention. And I've hated it for a long time, but I didn't want to complain unless I could offer something. And probably about 6 months ago, I was walking my golden retriever and my pug, Percy and Lexi, and all of a sudden, Thomas, I had this. It was one of those
enlightenments.
You know what? Call it whatever. And you know what it was, brother? It was literally this. Well, I'm gonna call it the voice. The voice said, "They don't call it an anti-drowning jacket. They call it a life preserver."
Yes, okay.
And I'm like, whoa. And then I'm like, so then my mind started, I'm like, we get in the car, we don't click on an anti-crash belt. We click on a safety belt. They don't call it death insurance, they call it life insurance.
Life insurance.
So I'm like, wait a second. Why can't we do this with suicide? So, and we can. So I don't talk about suicide. I talk about, my journey now is about life preservation. Because if you think about suicide prevention if you look at just the word prevention, it's to intentionally stop something from happening. Well, one, we as human beings, we suck at that. We're not good at that. That's not our skill set. However, if you look at the definition of preservation, the word is defined as taking something of value and keeping it safe. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, well that's empowering. Why? Let's do this. So it's about life preservation. Why can't we focus on? We've got to change how we refer to the crisis that we're in. It's not working calling it suicide prevention, because if in fact we're successful by the grace of the heavens in stopping somebody from killing themselves, which is incredible. Well, then what? Well, what next? Because I prevented it. Well, then what? Well, preservation, it's already implied. There's something more to preserve something. You take this thing of value and you keep it safe. You stay connected. Like this. So I said, we've got to change it. So my big bucket list thing is the great, amazing organization. Huge, phenomenal, amazing people. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I will one day get them to change their name to the American Foundation for Life Preservation.
Wonderful.
September will not be Suicide Prevention Month. It'll be Life Preservation Month. When you call 988, you're not calling a crisis line. I know I'm in crisis. You don't need to remind me. How about you say, hey, thanks for calling the Life Preservation Line. What can we do to remind you that life is worth living? Like, we got to change this.
Wow, true.
So,
And that's incredible. So, guys, as I mentioned, David's contact us information is there in the comments or in the information which I've put across. He, and yes, I'll give you all this information, whether it is his telephone number or even his email. I'll be putting across. He's a renowned speaker. He has put across more than 900 times to audience across US, Canada, Central America, Japan, Germany, South Korea, Italy, India, etc., etc., giving in-person and visual presentation on subjects of, I was about to say suicide, but about life preservation, about trauma, about about mental health, and servant leadership. David, over here, I will not ask you about what are the tasks that you have been doing or the talks that you're doing, but what I will ask you is that in case people have got these, whether we call it as demons,
sure.
beliefs, or whether we got these particular thoughts that they don't matter, life does not matter. Again, I don't like the, as like you say, you said it's not the word, but what I would like to say is that I don't want advice, but what are the suggestions that people could look or think about when they consider that life is not worth living?
And I get it. The first thing I would say to my brother or sister out there is, I am so sorry that you are suffering. Like, I get it. I would never tell you I know exactly how you feel, because I don't. But I can relate. And if you want to talk, please, seriously, call me. I'm not, just call me. And here's an interesting thing that this whole thing about connection really has saved my life. I believe connection is the opposite of trauma. Trauma isolates us, pulls us apart into this place where we create these beliefs. I get it. I do. And connection, and I use the Brene Brown definition, and she says, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued. Like, okay, we all want that. And from that, there's only one thing that comes, it's hope. How could you not feel hope when you feel seen, heard, and valued? And so I've been teaching for some years now about the impact of connection on the people who we do that. I'm big on remembering names, letting people know how I feel, and different practices. But my beloved brother Thomas, who sent this to me, an article that they did a study And they compared two things. They compared what's the impact of self-care, which is important, body, mind, spirit, diet, sleep, time outside, those different things. What's the impact of the value, how it impacts somebody who is a great practitioner of self-care versus somebody who actively seeks to make connection and some act of kindness to a stranger? Like, what ultimately behooves the person who the practitioner the best? And you know what they found out?
Mm-hmm.
That
What is that?
actually the people who do the connection part, they thrive more than the people who focus on the self-care. Not that self-care is bad, but it was, and I had, and this came right, I had this situation. I was going to the University of Alabama a week ago Friday, last Friday, and I was kind of cranky and I wasn't feeling my best. It was early in the morning. Usually I'm okay. And I'm like, all right, and here I'm going to talk to 500 behavioral health people at the great University of Alabama, Roll Tide, like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, I need to practice what I preach. And so went through security and got to the end, and there was the supervisor's desk where TS at. And I stopped and I said, ma'am, may I say something? And she was like, yes. And I said, thank you. And she looked puzzled. And I said, I thought about this the other day, that it has to be hundreds and hundreds of threats that you and all your amazing staff that you have squashed down, and I don't even know about. And that's how great you are at your job.
Wow.
And I just want to say thanks. And she was like, wow, thank you. And I'm like, okay. So then I went a little bit further. There was a police officer, and I said, sir, may I say something? And he said, yeah. And I said, I'm in this airport a lot. And it dawned on me, I never feel afraid. And it's because of you. It's because of you and your brother and sisters in uniform that are there all the time. And he said, wow, man, thank you. And he put out his hand and shook. And then there was a third person, younger guy, and this is 4:00 in the morning, and he's cleaning. And I said, hey, may I say something? And he looked at me and I said, you know what? I come to this airport a lot, and it's always like sparkling clean. It is never messy. Never messy. And I know it's because of like what you do. And I said, I got emotional. I said, I just want to say thanks. I really do. And he was like, wow. So I don't know how those three people felt. I don't. But within about 2 minutes, now as I'm making the gate, I literally felt like 1,000% better. I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, oh my God. And I practice this all the time. And it continues. So this to say to my brother or sister there who's suffering, I know how hard it is when we're in that horrific place that the last thing in the world we want to do is reach out to another human being. I get it. I swear to God. Get it. But what I would say is, it's almost like magic in these little acts of connection, how much better we can feel in that moment. And in that moment, we've kicked the monster in the balls, quite frankly, because he can't do anything to us when we're connected with another person. He can't.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. So, guys, two of the key takeaways is, one is community, reaching out to somebody,
Mhm.
whether it is showing that you're vulnerable, you're hurting, and there might be somebody who may be busy in their own terms. They may not understand, but there are communities who are ready to listen. Reach out to them. Another thing is, reach out to your own community. It's, of course, there I've heard about that. You may be in a group, you may be doing a lot of services, like David himself. He was involved with the palliative care of the pet animals, but still he never felt that he was doing a great job. He never felt that he was enough. It's at these moments you should dig deeper to reach out to people who can listen to you and make a life worth living. And the second most important thing is, Make it, take it as a challenge. Okay, you think that life is not worth living, but how about just having an attitude of gratitude for the next few days and see what happens?
Mm.
David himself has given an example. David, just being mindful of the time, what would be some of the key thoughts that you would just want to put out to the listener of one or hundreds, whoever is listening? What are the thoughts on that?
Well, I want to add one other thing that I've added to the work that I do is, and I think is really important, brother, is that most great suicide awareness trainings, and they're fantastic, they include a significant amount of time spent on looking for certain signs. These are the signs to look for. The truth of the matter is, those signs are never there. They're not. And yet we continue to train people to look for them. And what I realize is that by doing so,
Hmm.
we are actually setting them up to have a false sense of security
Hmm.
that when they say, I didn't see any sign, and then the person must be okay. But we are masters at hiding those. And for the longest time, I've wanted to talk about this, but I had so I hadn't. So now what I've come up with a program that says just because you didn't see the sign doesn't mean you have to miss the sign. And it's like a fight. Sun Tzu says all warfare is deception. Right now, the monster knows exactly what we're going to do. He says,
Hmm.
okay, we're looking for these signs, and we're not. So I've developed, and brother, if you want, I'll send them to you. 6 questions. Say, pick one person in your life. Because here's the thing, you're not going to know. We would love to say that you're going to know who potentially is at risk for suicide. The reality is you're not going to know. I mean, I found a report from 1865 in which they had done a study in which they affirmed the fact that the people who are suicidal are masters at hiding it. So, okay, so then we need to do something different. And these questions asked not when a person is in a depressed state, but asked when a person is feeling okay. These questions asked on a regular basis, it's a conversation, creates the opportunity that mask of, hey, don't worry, I'm okay. Maybe it slips, and we get a glimpse at what's behind that mask. Because I mean, I just found a report, an incredible article from a psychiatrist who said, "I'm a psychiatrist, and I didn't see it coming." And he had somebody close to him in his family who killed himself, and he said, "This is what I do, and I didn't see the signs because we're not going to show you." So we got to take a different approach. We got to call it something different. We got to focus on life preservation. We got to realize there's not going to be somebody here saying, I'm
Hmm.
suicidal. So what we got to do is we got to pick people in our life and just look under the hood.
Beautiful.
And there's one last quote that I'll leave you with, brother. Drew Ramsey is an amazing psychiatrist. You can find him on Instagram. He's a wild man. He's amazing. He's very much into brain gut health. And so Dr. Ramsey says this: someone you see today is thinking about killing themselves. Your smile, your question, your love could save them. Trust me, they told me it did.
Wow, that's amazing. I would love to connect. And guys, I will be putting out those 6 questions what David has put across in the comments. Do have a look onto it. And David, first and foremost, a huge, huge thank you uh, about what you are doing, the support to many, many people, and showing the necessity of putting one's self care on a pedestal.
Mhm.
As you continue this journey from the isolation of mental illness to mental hellness to mental well being, it is a beautiful and inclusive space. Thank you for who you are. Thank you again for your space and time. And thank you for giving me the part of being in your journey again. Thank you, David.
Thank you, brother. I love you. You're the best.